I feel so much more fulfilled. I don't go home like, oh, I'm so depleted. I go home and I feel like, okay, what else can I do for my business now? Like, what can I look up? What can I read about? What can I, and it's sort of, I felt recharged, which is sort of, I didn't expect that was going to be the case,
This is Rebel Therapist, a podcast for entrepreneurs who are trained as therapists and who want to level up their businesses, make a bigger impact, feel fulfilled, and be very well paid. I'm your host, Annie Schusler. This week, I'm talking to Dr. Erin Griffiths, a holistic psychiatrist in San Francisco and the owner of Beyond Psychiatry. Listen as we talk about why she made a pivot from more traditional psychiatry and what that change has been like for her business so far. We create our own businesses partly because we want the freedom to work in the way that we want to work and the way that we believe in working. Then we can easily, accidentally replicate the things that we didn't love about wherever we were before. Erin was brave enough to look at her business and acknowledge that it wasn't using all the best parts of her and she wasn't yet serving at her highest level. It was already a great, successful business, but she wanted more for her and for her clients. I wonder if you can relate to this. I know I really can. I know that every single year I see things in my business that I've replicated unconsciously, and then I'm able to consciously change them. As you listen to Erin's story about creating Beyond Psychiatry, think about what you might want to grow beyond. Welcome, Erin. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Annie. It is really my pleasure and an honor. Thank you so much.
So you are a psychiatrist who practices holistic psychiatry. Can you tell us why this movement is so important to you?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. Holistic psychiatry means to me that we take more aspects of health into account. We're moving past sort of the traditional idea of, mental sickness, and we're treating mental wellness. We're moving towards wellness rather than sickness. So that's where the mental health comes in. And we're not, as a holistic psychiatrist, I view it as, meds aren't the be all end all, right? They're not the end of the story for treatment, right? They might be part of the story for treatment. And, number one for me, it just means that it's sort of a code. Holistic psychiatry means holistic is sort of like creative thinking for wellness, which I really love, thinking creatively to push people towards wellness. And, and another big thing for me is that it means collaboration. So true collaboration between patient and doctor, but also collaboration between the doctor, me, and the community and, other practitioners and other therapists, because I think we need to live in a community and not sort of like in our own little bubble as practitioners.
And I think some people think of holistic psychiatry as anti-meds or not ever prescribing meds. And that's not true for you, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I sort of, I take the approach that when people come see me, they're getting a combination of, sort of very traditionally trained psychiatrist, because I went to medical school, I did my residency, and I believe in medications. But I also believe that there are other things that we can do to approach wellness. There are other stories out there other than just, psychopharmacology. And I think that's really helpful, specifically for people who maybe, have always been told in their lives when they've seen other psychiatrists, you have to stay on medications your whole life. Which can be sort of devastating to some people, or sort of looking at it in, okay, I understand the pharmacology behind it. Let's see if it's appropriate to perhaps question that, or see if we can decrease the medications or minimize the medications for best health outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And when I met you, you had already made one pivot towards holistic psychiatry and really being publicly a holistic psychiatrist. But then you went through a process that helped you understand that you still had further to go in how you wanted to present yourself and kind of how you wanted to be known and how you wanted to help people. So tell us about that. Like, tell us about that first pivot that you made, and also, how did you know you weren't all the way there yet?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when I first started, I did my training back east, and it's where I'm from originally. And I came out to San Francisco because I've always wanted to live here. And I joined a very large group practice, a very large private group practice. And I thought, yeah, this is my dream. I'm super happy doing this job. I have colleagues. And I found that after several years of doing that, I was really not able to be as creative as I wanted to be. I didn't really have control over how I saw that I needed to practice to best suit my patients. I was sort of confined, and so I made the decision that I had to open my own practice, and I did that. And my practice previously it was called Mensana SF. And what Mensana means is healthy mind. So it's part of Mensana and Corpore Sano, which is a healthy mind and healthy body. And so, it really, at that time, it really encapsulated how I believe that the mind and the body are connected, and we really need to treat the whole person. The pivot that you're referencing was when I realized that I was not practicing as big as I wanted to be. Now, what does that mean? It means that I wasn't fully using all of my creativity. I wasn't really pushing myself. I was sort of replicating what I had done before in the other group practice. It was what I knew. It was what I did. And just sort of opening up my own office didn't really truly make the difference. I had to do a lot of deep searching and a lot of, questioning and pushing how uncomfortable I was, and sort of figuring out what that was and getting the lesson from it. And then I pivoted to this new, sort of practice that I now have.
And tell us about your new name and your new tagline.
Yeah. So my new practice is called Beyond Psychiatry. And I really love that because I feel like it really totally encapsulates what I am doing. Well, I'm going sort of beyond traditional psychiatry. I'm offering a different experience for people that I don't know that they've had yet, and I'm pushing outside of the box, as it were. And so I love my logo because my logo it's mountains with the sun coming behind it, which I think is a really beautiful reference, both just visually, but also because my grandfather, it's sort of an homage to my grandfather, who at age 64 climbed Mount Everest.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was just such an inspiration for me. He was always, even at 64, he got to 22,000 feet. He didn't make the summit, but, that was not a failure to him, right? It was you push and you get to the next base camp. And then you push, and then you just keep moving on. You keep striving, keep climbing, even though it's uncomfortable, you keep doing it. And I just always took his lessons. He represented to me that it's never too late. Change is always possible. He started running marathons when he was 55. He's just an incredible person. So to me, the mountain imagery is really super special, super important to me.
So he didn't have a default life. He didn't just sort of do things that were expected of him and sort of chug along. He really took his life and looked at what is possible. What do I want to do?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can tell you that when he decided to climb Mount Everest, my grandmother was not the happiest because, he was 64, and that's when you start, quote, slowing down. But for him, he really had to push. He really had to, do it because it was possible. And I think what a great lesson for people, to not get stuck and to not feel like, okay, this is inevitability. I have, I'm on the conveyor belt. I can never get off. It's super scary. And I know that feeling because I've been there in my own life, right? And I've talked to people about that too. And so that to me is a huge lesson.
Yeah, and this idea that you could easily, you found yourself replicating some aspects of what you had done before, even though you were trying to create your own business. I think that can so easily happen. I think that has definitely happened to me. And I see it happen to so many people where we want to go out on our own. And then if we're not super conscious, we end up replicating things that don't really fit us just because they're kind of what's expected, they're what we're familiar with or what other people are familiar with. And so it's brave to say, no, this actually isn't my vision. I'm going to rebuild this, even though I don't have to rebuild it. Like your business was doing well. So it wasn't like when I met you, it wasn't like you were having anything broken in your business. It's just, like you said, you wanted to be really living your full life and serving at your highest level.
Yeah, that was exactly what happened. And I sort of had been feeling that way. Like my gut or my intuition was telling me like, this isn't totally correct. Like this isn't, exactly the most fulfilling thing. And I would kind of push that away and say, well, no, but I have a lot of patients and I'm very busy and I'm everything that, what you would on paper, you would say is very successful. But I found that I was, from an energy standpoint, I was depleted. I wasn't fulfilled. I was finding that I was going home at the end of the day, like lesser than I was, when I started the day. And so to me, especially when I kind of had a light bulb moment where, I talked to people all day about like, how do you live your most fulfilled life? And I'm sort of the hypocrite who's not listening to what I'm saying, and I think taking a step back and say, okay, wait a minute, pause. What do I love about this, and what can I change about it? And then realizing and really truly believing that it's possible. It's huge to believe that things are possible and not like cut them off before you even imagine that they are.
Absolutely. So now, who are your right fit clients?
So my right fit clients are, basically people who are wellness minded, meaning they have some idea of, what they want as far as living going towards wellness, right? People who have had experiences before with more traditional psychiatry practices or traditional medical practices, and who have honestly been sort of scared or not had the best experience with it. And so they're sort of hesitant, unfortunately, to see another psychiatrist because they feel like, I'm going to have the same experience. When people come to me, I usually hear very similar things if they come from another practice or, if I'm out in the community talking about what I do. And they always say, number one, my doctor spends 10 minutes with me. I don't feel like I'm heard. I'm on medications that I've been on for a long time. I don't even know if I need them. I don't know what they're for. And then I just don't know if, I'm ever going to get any better because I've been getting the message that this is just how it's going to be. And so that to me, like the fact that I've heard that so many times signifies that perhaps this is a message that is getting sent to people, probably inadvertently, because most psychiatrists I've met and I've worked with are lovely people. They're very, generous and kind and giving. But I think it's just this idea of not sitting, not listening, not hearing what the patients say, not really truly understanding that it's a collaboration and not a top-down approach.
Yeah. Yeah. And how does it work? Like what are the services like that you offer? Is it one session at a time or is it, a particular program that people step into?
So I offer many different options towards wellness, right? Not just mental wellness, but just overall wellness. My tagline for my new practice is curated mental wellness. And so when I think of a curated collection, I think, you pull from different options and you make it your own. You make your own special, individualized, personalized thing, right? Collection or soundtrack or whatever the collection is. And I take that as that's what we do here, that we curate together. If therapy would be helpful, we do some psychotherapy. If, yoga, we have an in-house yoga teacher. So if yoga seems that it would be, appropriate, we do yoga. If it seems like we want to do wellness coaching, we can do wellness coaching. We have an intuitive healer who also does nutritional consults. So we have that as well. We have CBD consultation. So it's a bunch of different things in addition to the more traditional, pharmacology that we can add to sort of the collection. But the other exciting thing that we do here is what's something called TMS. So it's transcranial magnetic stimulation, which is a mouthful. But what it means is TMS is a way that we treat depression without medications. So we're able to stimulate the brain, wake the brain up in a sense, and get people treated without, having to use pharmacology, having to use medication. So I have sort of all of those bits and pieces that I sort of, we collaborate together to figure out what's the best path forward, because everybody's path is different, right?
That is amazing. How long has TMS been around?
So it was FDA approved in 2008, but it's been around for longer than that. I've been treating patients with TMS for years. I actually did my training in it back east. And I find that it's such a perfect complement to, especially if you're sort of more of an alternative kind of psychiatrist, or you're trying to treat people that's not, necessarily purely medication based. TMS is a really great option.
That's so wonderful.
Thank you.
The whole combination of everything that you just mentioned, it just seems like what an incredible difference to have those things to pull from.
Yeah, I feel I feel so fortunate that, I'm able to do that. And that I also, kind of took a deep breath and said, okay, what's going to be in the best service for my patients? What's going to be in the best service? And not feeling like limited to, well, this is what I was trained. This is how I was, I have to follow STAR D, and, which is fine science, but, sometimes you have to be creative. You have to add creativity to the science.
Yeah. And how are people finding you?
So people find me initially when I did my first pivot that we talked about. I was on a lot of insurance panels. So people were finding me through insurance. And now that I've decided to practice more in a holistic way, practice in a more non-traditional way that insurance companies don't necessarily really recognize, and they limit too much. So I've come out of insurance networks, but my patients who had insurance are still sort of, with me. And then the biggest, source of people finding me is really referrals, honestly. I have great relationships in the community. And I think that's because, I try to be as collaborative as possible, while also, and this is really important, but also really respecting the therapist-client relationship and not encroaching on that, and sort of like really supporting that and saying, you know what, I'm going to help you with medications, or I'll help you with TMS, or I'll help you with these aspects, but let me also talk to, your therapist and get us all on the same page, get us all on board.
Yeah. I'm imagining therapists love you. That, a lot of what you're saying about, I'm a therapist, I love you. I'm just finding like,
thank you, Annie. I love you too.
The problems that you're saying your clients have come to you having experienced, I think a lot of their therapists have experienced that in a parallel way too. And again, not putting down psychiatrists, but just the process, the way it has been. That, a lot of therapists have been frustrated too, or have felt out of control in that relationship. This is future Annie jumping in for a minute. Erin references a program she participated in. She's talking about the Superpower Method for Therapists Intensive. I'm offering it again from October 23rd to 25th, 2019. If you want to build or rebuild your private practice using your strengths, this is your program. I'll show you how to bring in the kinds of clients you truly love working with, create a marketing plan you feel great about, and set your business up to bring in plenty of money. We spend 3 days together online in a small group, and then you've got a whole year of follow-up calls. To learn more and apply, head over to rebeltherapist.me/superpower. That's rebeltherapist.me/superpower. All right, let's get back over to Dr. Erin. So how many people are on your team?
So right now, it's interesting that it's interesting. I'm just thinking that it's interesting that you asked that, because I'm thinking back to my pivot that I did, and I really had to sort of hone in on what my vision was and stay focused with that. And so in order to do that, I had to make some really difficult choices as far as staffing is concerned, and that was uncomfortable for me, being that I'm always trying to be giving and take care of people, but in the service of the business, I had to say, okay, I have a different direction that we're going in. And so currently we have my clinical practice, my patient care coordinator, who also is my TMS technician. So she does all of the TMS, and that's Monica. She's wonderful. And I also have my holistic practice manager, Tiffany. And so that's really important, because she truly understands the different aspects of what it means to be holistic, and make sure that my vision sort of becomes a reality.
And so what does that mean? What is she doing day to day?
So she does all of my social media. She coordinates all of my marketing. She does any kind of difficult, challenging billing that comes up with the different services that we have. She sort of coordinates all of that. She's really sort of like the liaison in a holistic way. So she does, because we offer so many different things. She's sort of like the person who brings it all together.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so she's really in it with you, and she really understands and is part of your message.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate. I have two great people.
So how do you figure out, how much do you charge, and how do you figure out with all of these different ways that people can work with you? How do you figure that out?
It was really tough. I have to be totally honest. I know that we worked a lot when I was, in the course. We worked, about money and what does money mean, and what's your relationship with money. And I found that it was very helpful to look at more of sort of worth rather than money, and think about, how can you say, okay, this is worth, my services are worth something, because we're getting people well, and it's different than, I think, when people go to, like I'm saying, a psychiatrist is a little more traditional and more cookie cutter, and 10-minute med checks for say $300 or something. It doesn't feel as all encompassing. So I think that I had to do a lot of thinking about that. I had to talk to a lot of my colleagues and figure out what basic rates are for the area, just what people do, for business owners. So my rates are between $250 and $500, depending on the length of treatment, the services that we're doing. Generally $500 is the max, but it might go over that if, say, we do something like we offer something called a talk and walk.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's really, really special. So I'm located just in this lovely part of San Francisco, where we have a wonderful green space right next to us. And so I find that sometimes patients really like the expanse of nature and not being stuck in an office, so that's another service that we can do. So just depends.
That's wonderful. So how do you feel now about, and I know the pivot is recent, so there's, it's always in process, but how are you feeling about the money part of your business right now?
Yeah, I feel, it's funny, because the money before wasn't the big issue. It wasn't the motivating factor for me, because I was super busy and I had all these insurances were just sending me, patients hand over fist, just oh my God, and it was the time factor and my feeling that my services were I was really using every part of my brain as much as I could, to sort of to get people to the next level. And so I'm finding now that my practice is a lot calmer. I feel I feel so much more fulfilled. Like we were talking about before, I don't go home like, oh, I'm so depleted. I go home and I feel like, okay, what else can I do for my business now? Like what can I look up? What can I read about? What can I, and it's sort of, I felt recharged, which is sort of, I didn't expect that was going to be the case, And so I'm so much more at peace with the money part now, because I know that, like, in order for me to do the best, I have to feel the best. I can't be, running a practice and trying to do what I do if I don't feel well, if I feel depleted. So much more. Yeah. It's been so much more fulfilling.
Yeah. And it's like, you can't separate the money from those other pieces like energy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Such a good point.
So what's a typical day like for you? I really love this is one of the biggest reasons I love having this microphone, is I get to ask really nosy questions. But what time do you get up, and what do your rituals look like?
So I generally get up about 5 a.m.
Wow.
I know. It's my husband gets up at like 4:50. So, and generally, I sort of try to just ease into the day if I can. So my big thing that I've been doing that I find so helpful right now is I've been trying to take really deep breaths. Like before I even open my eyes in the morning, I just stay in bed, take like 5 really deep breaths, and kind of ground myself before I even get out of bed. So that's been really calming. I think it's been really helpful. And then, rituals as far as I have 2 kids. So a lot of times my rituals are, what does the family need? What are we doing now? The summertime rituals are different than the school time rituals. So I try to maintain at least some level of consistency where, I try to do a little bit of yoga, try to do a little bit of just grounding work before I can, enter my day. And then when I get to my practice, I like to be here, earlier than when the patients show up, and I can just kind of, set my intention, right? Like you go to yoga class and say, like, set an intention for the practice. Sort of what I do in my practice, like in my physical practice every day. I try to just say, okay, today I'm going to do this. So yeah, so those are the pretty, I like to be as physically active as I can, but sometimes I just don't, and it's fine, whatever. My big thing that I try to do every day if I can is I'm on the 4th floor. So I say, like, okay, if I'm not going to do any yoga or any of, cardio or anything, I'm just going to go up 4 flights of stairs today.
Yeah. Yes.
So yeah.
Excellent. So if you could time travel to the beginning of your own business, what would you tell the Erin of that time? And if we could do like one piece of advice that's more like a big picture mindset thing, and maybe one tactical thing.
Yeah. Really good question. I feel like my big picture, one thing that I would want to tell myself, and this is really, really key, is that evolution is necessary. Right? Evolution is a sign of growth and progress and not failure. And I sort of, I was hung up on the tug that I was feeling that, I wanted to change something because I was saying, I can't do another big thing. I just did a big thing. I can't, and I sort of would have liked to have talked to myself back then and said, like, no, go with your gut, go with your intuition, because you will get it right. Right. And so that's sort of my big takeaway for big picture. And then what was it? Practical?
Practical, tactical, okay. Just some like little piece of advice.
Yeah, man. I think the big thing is just try to have fun in business if you can, because let me tell you, accounts receivable, payroll, taxes, all that stuff, they sucks. It just, that sucks, right? And so if you get mired down into those details and you don't continue to have fun, you might as well go work for somebody else. You're not to sort of look at those things as like, okay, those are some things that I have to do and they're annoying, but I have to do them. But also look at this big creative part of my brain that I get to use and live in so much of a bigger way. now that I've taken the leap. So have fun, and know that, when you have more fun, people notice, and I think you make more of a difference.
Ah, excellent. I love that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erin.
Oh, thank you, Annie. It was so much fun. Yeah, but thank you. It was really fun, and I really appreciate it.
You can find out more about Dr. Erin Griffiths at beyondpsychiatry.com. Something we didn't mention is that she also offers virtual appointments, so people don't have to fight traffic or find parking to see her. And she can see folks located anywhere in California. Remember, if you want to build your private practice by using your superpowers, apply for the Superpower Method for Therapists Intensive happening from October 23rd through October 25th, 2019. It's all online. Go to rebeltherapist.me/superpower. That's rebeltherapist.me/superpower. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.